The longly awaited Resident Evil Village is finally here, everyone. This newest entry into the RE universe is pushing new boundaries the series has never gone, and we're finally getting some answers to our longly awaited questions regarding the events of RE7. Resident Evil Village has been something I've been looking forward to all year long. I've been doing my best to avoid spoilers and other leaked information, and I'll say I was pretty successful for the most part, regardless of how oddly difficult that was. Yeah, I'm talking about you, Twitter. I was able to beat this game in about 2 days, and there was a lot I didn't see coming. Resident Evil Village has so many amazing moments that are visually and emotionally spectacular, but also some really questionable story choices that seem to be out of place even for this gothic horror title. So let's go over this new entry into Resident Evil and decide whether or not this game holds up to the survival horror experience the series is known for. Resident Evil Village takes place 3 years after Resident Evil 7, with Ethan Winters returning as our main protagonist. Ethan, alongside his wife Mia, is under witness protection and is now living in Europe, ready to start their new life. Everything seems fine for the most part, besides living within the shadows of the experiences of the Baker house. The couple has been able to build somewhat of a normal life, even having a new baby by the name of Rose. The two are working together to move past their trauma and become a normal family. However, things take a dark turn for the worse as Ethan witnesses Mia being shot as she is preparing dinner. Mia's death is at the hands of our veteran bioweapon slayer, Chris Redfield. Ethan is left in shock as Mia lies dead on their dining room floor. Though he asks Chris multiple times why he has done this, Chris doesn't answer and decides to take Rose with him. Ethan tries to intervene but is knocked out and then transported to an unknown location. However, the vehicle they are in gets ransacked by an unknown creature. Ethan finally awakes amongst the rubble in a mysterious winter forest. It's here where the actual game begins. Ethan enters the mysterious village where he sees nothing but the remnants of retreating villagers and their murders. As Ethan begins to get deeper into the village, he is encountered by a werewolf-like creature called the Lycans. Ethan survives and eventually finds 2 other villagers hiding in a nearby shack, trying to reach a safe post with others. After helping the 2 get in, we meet a couple more villagers who are in complete disbelief of what has befallen their village. Ethan, being an outsider, is rejected by some, but is allowed to participate in a prayer where we learn of Mother Miranda, the main antagonist of the game. This quiet moment doesn't last long, as one of the villagers transforms into a Lycan, murdering and causing a fire to break out, leading everyone in the room to die but Ethan. Later, after surviving the fire, Ethan is captured by Mother Miranda's henchmen, or what the game refers to as her children. It's during this time where we meet the later bosses in the game, and let's just say these enemies are incredibly unique for the series. Ethan is then tested by the group and is given a false chance of escape. Well, at least to their knowledge. Ethan, having military training and some of the best luck I've ever seen, makes it out alive unbeknownst to Mother Miranda's children. It's during this time that Ethan knows who he's up against to save his daughter. As Ethan makes his way out of this underground death trap, we meet one of the most interesting characters in the game called the Duke. This Duke is much like the RE4's merchant, but with some added bonuses like being able to cook food that will give you permanent abilities, as well as finally being able to buy ammo. This character also gives you insight into the story surrounding the village, the enemies Ethan is facing, and the whereabouts of Rose. This leads me to my next point. Rose has been hacked up and is now turned into small vials. Yeah, Rose is no longer in human form. Ethan is informed by this merchant that these pieces of his daughter are in the hands of Mother Miranda's children. Ethan must battle each of them to gain access to Rose and potentially find a way to turn her back to normal. It's during this part of the game where we start to venture through the striking areas around the village. Finding treasure and new weapons along the way, Ethan defeats each of these henchmen and ventures to meet Mother Miranda. However, before Ethan kills the last of Mother Miranda's children, he meets Chris again. Chris explains that he did not kill Mia, but rather tried to kill Mother Miranda back at the start of the game. We learn that Mother Miranda can transform into different beings and that she took the form of Mia to get close to Rose. Finally, Chris fully clears his name with Ethan, and the two band together to stop Mother Miranda. But things take another dark turn for the worse. Ethan is tragically stopped by Mother Miranda. He is murdered by her, losing Rose as he dies from his heart being ripped out of his chest. However, Chris discovers all this and decides that he's going to stop this madness and vows to save Ethan's daughter. It's near the end of the game where Chris battles his way through the village to gain access to Mother Miranda's headquarters. After Chris battles through these enemies, he finds the start of where all the mold has come from, a giant fetus-like mold hive called the Megamycete. Chris plants a bomb on the creature and makes his way into a lair and learns of the origins of Mother Miranda's children, the origins of the mold, its connection to one of the founders of Umbrella, and Evelyn's connection from RE7. As Chris searches the final areas of this room, he finds Mia alive and well. It's during this time that Mia tells Chris about the sad truth regarding Ethan's abilities and where we learn that Ethan is technically dead. Essentially, Ethan was murdered by Jack Baker at the start of Resident Evil 7, and the only reason he is alive is due to the Megamycete that has tainted his body. What this means is Ethan is almost a special kind of mold monster, one that just hasn't fully turned. It's at this moment where we find out that Ethan has been revived and that the merchant is now taking him to fight the final form of Mother Miranda. What Mother Miranda wants is to bring back her daughter who died of the Spanish flu a little over 100 years ago. Her goal was to use the mold to revive her child Ava with Rose as a vessel. I believe Rose is special to Mother Miranda due to her parents' DNA and anatomy. However, Ethan is able to take down Mother Miranda, but slowly starts to crumble away since the Megamycete mold is now also dying. He eventually meets Chris outside the battlefield where the two stumble away to safety as the Megamycete begins to engulf the area. Ethan, knowing that his life will end once the mold is gone, hands Rose over to Chris, wrapping his coat around her. He then says his final goodbyes and takes the detonator from Chris's hand. It's here where the mold separates them. As Chris and Rose escape in the chopper where Mia is, Ethan walks towards the heart of the mold. He then sets off the bomb, destroying the hive and himself as the explosion consumes the village. We are left with a saddened Chris explaining to Mia that Ethan is gone. The game then jumps forward to now a much older Rose, who we see wearing her father's coat. She's visiting his grave where she tells him that she has a lot of tests to do and that she misses him. It's during this sad moment where a car pulls up to pick her up. We then learn that Rose has some unique powers that are similar to Mother Miranda and Evelyn's. The game ends with Rose being told she's just like her father. As she looks out the window, Rose says she knows this as the car drives out into the far-off distance. This is just a short summary of the game, going over the main plots of it. There are a lot of little details I've left out for those of you who may still want to play this game. RE Village has a huge story, and trust me, it's worth a playthrough. Now, let's take a deeper dive into what makes this game unique. Resident Evil Village has made huge strides in creating new, unique, and interesting characters. This is a major step up from Resident Evil 7. I think Capcom really honed in on adding different characters and enemy types unlike its predecessor, where we mostly just saw mold monsters and different bosses. The different types of Kato-infected creations were so fascinating and left me wanting to learn more. These enemies not only acted differently, but also had their own individual movements that made the player adapt their fighting technique. Take for example the Lycans, who look much like werewolves. These enemies were quick but also tricky to aim at. For me, I would aim in the direction they were heading, or I would let them get close to me before firing my shot, possibly using my double guard to push them back. This enemy for the most part is also seen in packs, and this definitely added to the werewolf-like appearance and feel of them. Other enemies like the Moraica are slow yet powerful and sneaky. They can sway a whole bunch, but once you see their pattern, you can predict where to aim and land a blow. Also, I loved how these enemies were carrying different weapons in the game. What's even better is you can actually shoot the weapons out of their hands. I don't know why I love this so much, but it just felt really powerful. It felt like Ethan's military training did make a difference and that he's become a much better fighter in this game. Now, I think the standout characters of this game were definitely Ethan and Mother Miranda's children. Let's first take a look into Ethan. When I was first introduced to him in RE7, I didn't really feel connected to his character. He just felt really out of place from what was going on. However, I think this was the point of his character. Resident Evil 7 was the first RE game Capcom had done in first person. This was done to allow the player to feel like they were actually in the environments themselves, which also explains why Resident Evil 7 had VR compatibility. With Resident Evil Village, Ethan's character has been expanded upon into new areas, and finally seems like someone the player can relate to. Ethan's role in the story is to find his daughter and to kill the people responsible for taking her. This gave me more of a reason to care about him and a drive to see him complete his journey. Unfortunately, there was still something missing from Ethan's character. I would love to say Ethan turns into a robust character, but that isn't the case. In the game, Ethan's story feels even more out of place than in RE7. My attachment to him as a player is to feel sympathetic for Ethan's losses, but this isn't really done well. Ethan still feels very detached in a lot of the scenes. This search for his missing daughter is supposed to give Ethan some character development, but this being the sole purpose doesn't really work in the context of the game story. Characters like Harry Mason from Silent Hill or Sebastian Castellanos from The Evil Within are given time to explain their character and their connection to the situation, as well as their losses and their relationship with their daughters. In RE Village, we don't get this, but instead are given reasons to find out why the events of RE7 and RE8 have happened. The story does to some degree give us a reason to why this is happening to Ethan's family, but it's very short, and especially given how long the game is. Ethan's relationship with Rose is solely based on just saving her. The details of why Rose has been taken seem a little confusing and contrived from so many other games who did a better job at writing this in. As the player, we are not really given time to connect with Ethan and his relationship, even though the game runs 10 hours on your first playthrough. We are given more a connection to survive, which I loved. This is survival horror after all. I think there could have been more opportunities to connect and invest with Ethan and Rose. The little bit we do get is towards the end, and it's really not as much as I wished for. Though Ethan has had major changes in his character, he's still missing something for me. Maybe adding visuals of Ethan and his family together, or really tapping more into his loss and loneliness would have helped out a lot. Instead, the focus is on revenge and perhaps getting his daughter back to normal. This archetype has been done so much in survival horror. Trying to make Ethan seem like a well-rounded character when his first introduction was meant to be a catalyst for the player to feel more connected in the environments is a hard sell for me. It's one of the few problems I have with the game, but don't let this deter you from playing it. This game is so much fun regardless of Ethan's disposition. Also, Ethan is still really cool. I just wish the writing team would have given him a little more thought within the story. Other characters like Lady Dimitrescu and her daughters were really fascinating, and I spent so much time trying to find out everything I could about them. Though Lady Dimitrescu is a bloodthirsty bioweapon, she's still complex and has a lot of randomly emotional moments in the game. As Ethan slays her daughters down, you can hear Lady Dimitrescu getting more and more upset about her fallen daughters. I thought this was really sweet, and also scared me a little for what was going to come my way once I crossed paths with her again. I also loved the voice actress for Lady Dimitrescu. She did such an amazing job at conveying what a giant Madame Vampire Lady would sound like. Also, the way she stalks the player was a nice callback to Mr. X, though Lady D does have more of an elegant, regal walk about her. Hearing the sound of high heels walking towards you as you're running for your life was so unique and unlike anything I've ever played. She is by far one of the most memorable characters that have come out in recent years. Her relationship with her daughters was also really interesting to me. Though her daughters are much faster and bloodthirsty, they still respect and fear Lady Dimitrescu. They want to serve her, but also want to stay on her good side. I think this makes a lot of sense, especially when you see her final form, which is a crazy dragon monster. I just loved how this was the castle's final boss. It was such a fun and unexpected fight. After defeating Lady Dimitrescu, I was left wanting more time with her character, and really wished that we would have returned to the castle at some point in the game. But unfortunately that didn't happen. Mother Miranda's other children were also really neat, but seemed to play second fiddle to Lady Dimitrescu. Characters like Salvatore Moret seemed a little bit left on the back burner, though I did really enjoy his boss form. I just think this acid rain spewing fish monster deserved a little bit more screen time. Other characters like Donna Beneviento gave me one of the most terrifying experiences in gaming. Her character is a deranged and secluded doll maker with some sort of mental illness. She's able to control multiple dolls with her abilities and uses a hallucinogenic pollen from plants to snare her prey. Her area is a lot smaller than the castle, but packs a powerful punch. She actually takes your entire inventory away shortly after arriving, and reveals what I believe is one of the most terrifying moments in gaming I've ever had. I mean, if that's not the most Silent Hill thing I've seen in a while, I don't know what is. Her entire area was just really creepy, and I honestly loved it. Now, we can't leave out our smack-talking potty mouth Carl Heisenberg. This man right here has a special place in my heart. His power seems to be a magnetic ability towards metallic objects. His area is a giant plant where we start to see more of the RE human experimentation the series is known for. This area I did get lost in quite a bit, and it became a little jarring for me. However, this area had really cool factory and propeller-like architecture that was a nice change of pace from the Romanian castles and villages. Heisenberg is also probably the most stable of Mother Miranda's children, which is actually not in her favor. He wants Ethan to work with him in crushing her. Heisenberg, like Rose, was kidnapped and subjected to Mother Miranda's experiments. His life was forever changed, and I honestly have the most pity for him out of all the other children. His time with Ethan ends with him having the best insults, and I just loved that. His comment about Chris punching boulders made me smirk during my intense mecha fight with him, and was one of the standout moments in the game for me. One villain I wish I could have learned more about was the final boss herself, Mother Miranda. I really enjoyed this character design. She adorns black religious clothing and has raven-like feathers all around her. Her main power is the connection with the Megamycete, giving her multiple powers such as shape-shifting and pyrokinesis. As you play as Ethan, you get the feeling like you're being watched from afar. You also encounter random crows throughout the game. I don't know if this is Mother Miranda herself, or if she can also control the crows. I don't remember seeing this in the game, but I think this could be possible. Mother Miranda's role is very similar to Ethan's in the game. She's trying to get back her daughter, only in a more heartless and cruel way. Her screen time in the game is only a handful of times, but her name is constantly mentioned. However, Mother Miranda dates back past Spencer. I feel like there are so many things I wish to know about her than the game actually gave me. It's a little unfortunate, but I'll take what I can get. Lastly, we need to talk about Chris Redfield and his overall role. Now, I gotta say that I knew Capcom would do our boy right. I was worried for some time that Chris may have been under some type of control or influenced by an evil enterprise, but luckily he's still the hero we all know and love. Chris in the game takes more of an Ada Wong approach to communicating, which is not at all until absolutely necessary. This was a little jarring for me. I think what I loved most about seeing Chris again was how much he has physically changed but somehow has stayed the same. Chris still deeply cares about his work to fight against bioterrorism and the people who are impacted by it. Also, this just might be me, but I feel like they merged RE7 Chris with RE5, and honestly, I'm happy about it. He looks exactly like he should given where we are in the timeline. We even got to play as Chris again, and I just really loved that. Mowing down enemies just felt so much fun and also made you feel so powerful. It makes so much sense for a character like Chris to be so skilled at combating bioterrorism since he's been around since the beginning. I just couldn't be more pleased with him, and loved seeing him come back. The best part of the entire game, in my opinion, is the locations you trek through in RE Village. I think all these locations stole the show and are what impressed me the most. Each region is completely different from the next, and the game's linear style makes you backtrack and look for resources like meat, metals, and ammo. The village being the hub of the entire game made me realize how surrounded these villagers were. All around them are locations that contain horrifying monstrosities. It represents that they are meant to be contained and used for experiments these lords and Mother Miranda need. I felt a sense of abrupt loss spread everywhere. People seeming like they were ripped out of their beds or dropping everything they had on hand to escape just gave a sense of dread that really stuck with me. As the day would pass, seeing these items and last moments just sitting there just gave me chills. However, my favorite location has got to be the castle of Dimitrescu. This was the most enjoyable area in the game for me. There are so many references to the original mansion in Resident Evil 1 and the castles in RE4, as well as new ideas and touches. This castle had way more of a gothic tone to it. Its contrast of regal and noble architecture to blood-drenched, torture-filled dungeons just added to the absurdity of it all. This area also had some of my favorite doors and rooms in Resident Evil. The bloodbath area was just so disturbingly beautiful. This area and many others also reintroduced lightly done puzzles, which I was really happy to see come back. Resident Evil 3 Remake didn't have this, and to see this last entry bring puzzles back was really nice. Other areas like the House of Beneviento and the swamp seem much smaller but very atmospheric. The House of Beneviento, for example, had really foggy parts along with dolls and hanging bodies sprinkled about. This area also has enemies crawling out of the ground. This area gave me such Silent Hill vibes with a dash of old school horror. The basement area of the house may have been small, but was full of terror. The lying human-sized doll of Mia that Ethan must touch and take apart really freaked me out, and I knew from that point on this game was scaling up the ideas of fear for the series. The swamp area was probably my least favorite in the game. This area really isn't scary, but more of a challenge. Your goal is to be quick jumping from one windmill to another while avoiding a transformed Saboteur. The final area worth mentioning is Karl Heisenberg's factory. This area had a lot of different layers to it and felt like the most traditional RE location in the game. There's a lot of different rooms dedicated to human experimentation, much similar to lab areas in previous games. Instead of viruses and parasites, we get mecha humanoid abominations. I think this was a good example of the series combining new ideas with previously envisioned settings. The factory area did drag a little bit towards the end, but at the end, we got to fight a giant Heisenberg robot with some of the best insults in the game. I love you, Heinzie. Overall, the locations were such a joy to explore. There are so many references to Resident Evil 4 that you can see as you play this game. Everywhere you visit was completely different from the last, and each location also introduced new enemy types. This kept me on my toes and also constantly adapting my fighting skills. The game's locations never felt stale and made it so easy to get absorbed into the world. Time for me just wasn't a thing when I was playing this game. I had to put it down just because I was really tired rather than paying attention to how many hours I had been playing on it. I think the dedication and love from all the teams in Resident Evil Village can be seen here with its environments. Well done, Capcom. This was a knock out the park. Resident Evil Village has gone above and beyond when it comes to its visuals and designs. The artists and musicians working on bringing this game to life put such fine details in everything they did. Environments are super fleshed out, unique, and well designed. Each area felt so different while also keeping me connected to its world. Additionally, the audio design was superb. Sound effects like organic pops that wood floors make in old houses, or the sound of rustling branches and steps, mixed with the beautifully done music, were just a pleasure and absolute fright to experience. However, none of this would have mattered unless gameplay was smooth. And let me say right here, this game delivered. The game ran so well on PC and other consoles. Environments would look beautifully during really critical moments in the game. Enemies in the game were well placed, fights were suspenseful yet balanced, and items like metals, gunpowders, and herbs were scattered a fair amount. The combat system in this game was a massive improvement from RE7. In RE7, I felt hits were registering really weird, like my hitbox was bigger than normal, and enemies could easily hurt me even when I would try to guard. However, Village improved significantly on this, at least in my perspective. Guarding felt easier to achieve, and I loved the combat added to the guard. If you double tapped the guard button at the perfect time, you can kick and punch the enemy off of you. It was really satisfying and reminded me so much of Jill's perfect dodge in Resident Evil 3 Remake. Another wonderful change from RE7 was the inventory screen and crafting section. Back in Resident Evil 7, your inventory screen wouldn't pause the game like every other RE game. The game would run in the background, making crafting on the fly an extra challenge that I personally didn't enjoy. For me, I have bad vision, so sometimes Resident Evil 7 I couldn't read what I was crafting, and it would make me a little frustrated. However, all this is gone in Village. The inventory system has combined its old school roots with new ideas. Our inventory screen is back to the briefcase similar to RE4. This allows you to organize to whatever preference you have. Also, this inventory screen pauses the game, giving you time to collect and see what you've crafted. Speaking of crafting, all the small crafting items you pick up in the game don't fill up your actual inventory. Only when you fully craft ammo or health would this then be added to your inventory. Also, crafting items is super easy and fluid. This was such a plus for me. I felt like I had time to see what I was doing and was able to be a little bit more strategic in my first playthrough. Overall, game and sound design are spectacular, and you could tell they put a lot of love into this. The final part of this review I want to bring up is the overall story and journey of Ethan Winters. For me, this is where the game missed a lot of opportunities. There were times in the game that the story and Ethan's position took me out of the experience. Ethan being a dead mold monster the entire time was a little weak for me. I know technically he wasn't cured in RE7, but I feel like if Ethan and Zoe were able to slop together a cure with 2 items, I would think a giant counter-bioterrorism organization like Blue Umbrella would figure out something. Also, Mia in the story just rubs me the wrong way, and honestly, I can't stand her. She constantly in the series has lied to Ethan, and at the price of his own well-being. She's just super shady, and I don't like how she can't tell her husband, who was searching for her for 3 years and saved her, that his body has turned into something different. Like, does she even really love him? I don't get why she needed to keep that a secret. Also, I gotta say this also goes for Chris too. There is plenty of time to tell Ethan what is happening, and the fact that he doesn't is just annoying to me. I get there is a huge bioterrorism attack happening, but there is strength in numbers. Why wouldn't you want everyone on the same page to fight and stop the same pandemic? Chris has gone through this before and also doesn't appreciate being left in the dark as well. This felt out of character for him. Also, the Duke carrying Ethan to the final fight with Mother Miranda made literally no sense. Chris fights tooth and nail to get near Mother Miranda, but the Duke just strolls up in there? Like, come on. If the Lycans are bloodthirsty and hungry monsters, I would figure they would go for him first. Like, Homeboy could feed 20 Lycans. Just saying. I also feel this game's story could have used just a few more moments from the villager's perspective. Almost every Resident Evil game has a cutscene where we see a seemingly normal place get ambushed by the game's main enemy type. Games like Resident Evil 2 and 3 are perfect examples of this. It helps place the terror of what has happened. In Resident Evil Village, we only see the aftermath, and though I love that, it would have been cool to have a cutscene or a villager relive a PTSD moment from the attack. This little add-on would help to make the story feel more connected to the games before it. I know that this part of the series is a new direction, but I think adding the perspective of enemy attacks on civilians or more time learning about the cause of all this would help make the story fit more within the Resident Evil universe. There were times that it did seem pretty far from traditional Resident Evil games, and that's totally fine. However, I still think there needs to be a middle ground when connecting a game to Resident Evil's universe, besides a couple files, the Umbrella logo, and Chris just being there. Characters like Mother Miranda are barely seen and expanded upon. She holds such an important role in the timeline of the Resident Evil universe though. Towards the end of Chris's journey, we kinda just get an information dump about her. Evelyn in Resident Evil 7 got time to be fleshed out as a villain, but Mother Miranda really doesn't. I think this is a shame because she's really interesting and I would have liked to see more from her. Finally, we gotta talk about Ethan's death. It did get me in my feelings seeing Ethan put his coat over Rose and saying goodbye. I liked seeing Ethan have a really strong and sincere quiet moment. It was really needed for him. The scene made me care the most for Ethan's character in the game, but it was a shame that it was at the end. I think Ethan as a vessel for storytelling is good for a game experience and world building, but not so much as a character's personal development and relatability. There is still not that much known about who Ethan is. I think this is why his RE7 role made more sense to me than his RE Village role, but I gotta say I did like what Capcom did for Ethan. I just wish we learned more. Ethan being the first playable main character to be killed off in their second entry is a little unfortunate and kind of questionable. Is Ethan meant to be a mystery for Rose in a future game, or is it just the result of not knowing where to take Ethan's character in later games? I guess only time will tell. Following on Ethan's search for his daughter, I couldn't help notice how close related this was to Mother Miranda's own journey. It's almost like Ethan and Mother Miranda are two sides of the same coin. I think this would have been a really interesting edge to the story and would have really helped give Ethan and Mother Miranda more character development. Though Mother Miranda has turned into a corrupt, vile monster, it all started from the pain and loss of her daughter. The fact that she has been trying for so long and stooping so low to get her daughter back is actually really powerful and really sad. It's the exact same as Ethan's in a way. Both are willing to kill anyone to get their daughters back. In a sense, they both also end up losing their daughters together in the end. Miranda dying, preventing her from harvesting more people to experiment on, while Ethan realizing that he will die because he's just as part of the mold as Miranda, preventing him from leaving with his daughter. There is so much meaning in between the lines that would have been amazing if the story tapped into this. RE Village's story shines more in small moments like finding out about Lady Dimitrescu or the hint that Mia isn't dead in the House of Beneviento. On a larger scale, the story has a lot of weird moments that I have to turn my brain off just to accept what's happening. This is just a small price to pay for the overall experience of Village. This is a beautiful piece of work and is a masterpiece of a game, potentially even Game of the Year. The story may be shaky at times, but you are still eager to find out everything you can till the end. I think this is a powerful effect this game has had on the public. We might not get all of our answers at once, but who knows, maybe we will in the future. Resident Evil Village pulls so much love within its environments, characters, and gameplay. It also introduces callbacks to earlier entries that we haven't seen in a while, like adding Mercenaries mode. However, I think Resident Evil Village is a love letter to the many survival horror series that have defined the genre. The dreary and abandoned town similar to Silent Hill, the elegant yet terrifying monsters like the ones found in Parasite Eve or Fatal Frame, or a disturbing castle with a dark underbelly like the one in Haunting Ground, all seem to be influences here in RE Village. Resident Evil Village was one of my favorite games I played this year. It tackles many new ideas while also referencing so much that came before in game design, story, and art. Resident Evil Village is not just the newest game in the series. It's an accumulation of all the efforts survival horror games have worked towards, and is the next leap into the future for the genre. Ethan Winter's story may have come to a close. However, his part in Resident Evil has opened the door not just for the future of the franchise, but also for the entire survival horror genre as a whole. I personally can't wait to see where this will take us. Thank you all so much for watching this episode of Side Eye Gaming. If you like this review, please give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to Side Eye Gaming for more content, and comment down below what you thought of Village. Anyways, thank you all so much again, and until next time, I love you, mean it. Bye!